Feel something?
Yeah. It's a fish.
Oh, yes! Yes!
Finally, it seems I am going to get face to face with my river monster.
We've done it. We've done it. Fantastic.
What really happened to river monsters? Jeremy Wade turned dreams into nightmares by pulling them from rivers all over the world for years.
The main thing is just this very, very wide mouth, and you've got needle-like teeth. They are sharp as well. You know, you put your hand in there and they'll draw blood. The Wells is not just a man-eater, it's a cannibal.
The show was over all of a sudden. The shocking truth has finally been told by Wade, who is now 69 years old. It's not what fans were told. Stay with me, because this story isn't just about monsters. It's also about the dark secret that the rivers hide. The teacher who chased monsters. Jeremy Wade used to be in front of a chalkboard before he became the man we see on TV fighting crazy monsters from the river. He taught biology in places as far away as Sudan and India, and as close as Kent, England, for almost 20 years. It was regular work that gave him a place to live, money, and the assurance that most people seek. But Wade's goal was never to get to the classroom. He used the money he made from teaching as fuel for his obsession with what lived below the surface of rivers around the world. He used it to pay for trips into the wild and buy gear to follow up on stories that scared him. He was always half gone, even when he was a teacher. He packed his bags and left on every holiday and chance to get away. Rivers far away became his second home. He never just found fish there, he also found stories told in secret by fishers and elders that had been passed down from generation to generation. People in the village warned of monsters that were big enough to swallow dogs, women who had lost loved ones in dark currents, and killers that could not be seen but dragged people under. People from the outside thought these were scary stories. There were hints to Wade. He paid attention, wrote down what he heard, and put together what became a live library. His own collection of river stories from Africa to South America to Asia. Each note made him more sure that stories often had truth to them. The cost of concentration is a heavy heart. Back in 2007, Wade got malaria while on one of his trips. It really hurt. He spent weeks in bed, weak and going in and out of consciousness. For a moment, it looked like the rivers had also taken him. Still, staying alive gave him something he didn't expect: silence. He wasn't able to move. He was bad at fishing. His only things were his diaries, his memories, and his busy mind. And in the stillness, an idea came to mind. What if everyone could see what he saw? What if the secrets he searched for in faraway places around the world were turned into a show? The show wouldn't just be about fishing. It would also be about the hunt, the danger, the cultures, and the science that were hidden in those rivers. He was sure it wasn't just another fishing show. The mystery had to take place in the water, with a subject who was real, dangerous, and quite often dead. In 2009, 2 years after that, River Monsters was born. People were thrown into a world they had never seen in the first show, which was shot deep in the Amazon basin. People saw the Arapaima, a huge fish with armor that could jump like a horse, the Paraiba catfish, which is said to eat whole animals, and the dreaded piranhas, whose stories were scarier than true. It wasn't just what Jeremy caught, it was how he slowly figured out the story, like a mystery being solved on camera. The mix went off. River Monsters became Animal Planet's most popular show almost overnight. Everyone watched every week. It was praised by scientists for being right. A lot of people who had never been interested in fish before became glued to their computers. Jeremy Wade, the quiet teacher who used to write stories in his papers, was now a TV star all over the world. Even though he was famous, Wade was still strangely unwilling. His only goal was to find the next clue, so he never thought of himself as famous. Success is good and bad at the same time. It got harder for everyone when the show got bigger, and the hunts had to be more dangerous and take place farther away. River Monsters was soon more than just a TV show. It turned into a worldwide trip that went beyond the Amazon and into some of the roughest water on Earth. What started as a man's love of river tales quickly spread around the world. But as the cameras followed him from continent to continent, the risks and stakes increased. It became clear, how far could Jeremy Wade really push the hunt before the river pushed back? The hunt that outgrew the jungle. When River Monsters' first season did really well, it meant that the show had to take bigger, riskier, and farther steps than ever before. People were hungry for more than just piranhas and catfish. They asked for stories from rivers all over the world, and Jeremy Wade had to give them what they wanted. The Amazon used to be the main plot point of the show, but it quickly became just the beginning. By the time the second and third seasons came out, the crew had flown to the icy foothills of the Himalayas, as well as to Africa and Asia. Each new place held the promise of wonder and the promise of danger. The Congo River was one of the most dangerous. The Congo wasn't just any river, it was one of the deepest rivers in the world, and a wild, uncertain beast. It had hidden violence in its currents, and its past was full of conflict and instability. It was a problem getting the tools in place. Things had to be ferried through the thick jungle, and it was dangerous to journey because of the politics in the area. Wade again had malaria here, which showed that the show's dangers didn't always come from the animals they chased. What almost broke them, though, was Southeast Asia, which was one of their biggest wins. The search for the huge pond stingray became one of the most famous parts of the series. A flat-bodied shadow that could pull boats under with a flick of its tail was talked about by people in the area. Even the toughest fishermen lost their cool after having to wait for days in the blazing heat. Then it finally showed up. The stingray, which was more than 15 feet long from nose to tail and weighed hundreds of kilograms, swam against the line so hard it looked like it could not be stopped. It wasn't luck that they were able to capture that moment on film. They worked hard and faced some danger that the public never fully saw. The problems only got worse. The group in Guyana cut their way through the jungle, using dugout canoes to get where there were no roads. The jungle was constantly rained on, tools rusted, and all communication with the outside world stopped. What people later saw as an easy adventure was really just a way to stay alive. There were not many meals and not much time to rest. Every bend in the river came with risks that could not be predicted by the script. There was more planning, more money, and more months away from home with each season. What was supposed to be a few weeks of filming turned into long, hard trips. The crew had to carry cameras up and down mountains, drag gear through mud, and work in temperatures that seemed meant to break them. By the seventh season in 2015, it was clear that there was a lot of stress. Some crew members who had been there since the beginning quietly left because the work was wearing them down. The burden only got heavier for those who stayed. The adventures that were shown on TV seemed to go smoothly, but behind the camera, people were tired and angry. Still, the cameras kept rolling. The bigger the fame, the higher the cost. But as the hunts grew more ambitious, another fight was waiting. One that would strike not just at the crew's strength, but at Jeremy Wade himself. Every mile deeper into the wild pushed the team closer to breaking point. But the biggest cost of all was still ahead. For Wade, the chase for monsters was about to become a test of body and mind, a battle that nearly ended his own life, when the hunt nearly killed him. When adventure stories are cut down for TV, they always look exciting, but River Monsters was much worse in real life than people thought it would be. Jeremy Wade wasn't just throwing lines into rivers. Every trip he took put his life in danger, and his body was proof of it. In the Congo, one of the calls was very close. The river itself was a predator with its fast currents, huge numbers of bugs, and hidden risks. But Wade's journey almost finished with something other than a fish. It was malaria. He was stuck in bed with a fever and was going in and out of awareness because of the sudden illness. For weeks, it wasn't clear if he would live. He later said that he was very close to losing that fight, just like thousands of other people do every year. Even after he got better, the weakness stayed, a warning that the most dangerous monsters were sometimes the ones you couldn't see. Not every danger was hidden. As Wade searched for the famous Arapaima in the Amazon, he had one of his most violent encounters. The fish jumped out of the water with such force that its scales looked like shields. His chest was hit right in the middle by it, hitting him like a horse charging. The blow hurt him badly and made him tired and sore for weeks. It was clear for a moment how weak even a pro could be in the face of nature's giants. The dangers that came with power were another thing. Not many people saw how dangerous it was to hunt an electric eel. There is enough electricity in these things to stun a grown man at 500 volts. In the water, that kind of shock can make you unable to move, and if you can't move, you could die. Wade was always just inches from disaster because he knew that one mistake could mean the end of all sound below the water. He wasn't the only one in trouble. People who watched often forgot about the crew, who were always in danger. During one trip, lightning hit a sound worker who was working outside. The team was scared when the bolt hit him and burned his legs. It served as a warning that nature didn't follow a script, no matter how well they planned. Then the grind began. Days of filming went on for more than 14 hours, and it was often very hot, very cold, or both. Meals were not regular. There wasn't much time to rest. And even after all the work, there was no promise of success. Wade, who is now in his 60s, had to go through cycles of long flights, trips to faraway places, and brutal shootings with almost no time to rest in between. Even though he was known for being very strong, he started to feel worn out. The wounds, illnesses, and tiredness didn't go away. They kept adding up year after year, leaving scars that weren't always clear. The stress was just as hard on the workers. As people got more and more tired, burnout spread, and by the later seasons, known faces started to go away. Those who stayed were carrying more weight and were smaller than ever. What people saw on TV was a victory. On the other side of the camera, life showed up. But as the threats got worse and the team got weaker, there was another shadow over the series that no amount of toughness could lift. When the monsters began to vanish. Every year for years, river monsters loved finding new things. Every season brought a new monster from mythology to life. Jeremy Wade had found more than 100 huge freshwater fish in 6 countries. These included tigerfish in the Congo and stingrays in Southeast Asia. But after so many trips, a question arose that how many tails were still around? Each show in the first season was different from the others, so it was fun to watch. But as time went on, that pool of wonder got smaller. Soon, the show went back to older rivers and species that viewers already knew. There were new ways to tell the stories, more information about the science, and a new setting for the tales. But fans who had been reading for a long time noticed the trend and began to wonder if Wade had just run out of monsters. If that were true, the answer would have been easy. Make up new dangers, exaggerate encounters, and put on a show for the cameras. Wade said no, though. Since the beginning, being real was a must. He thought that the whole point of the show would be lost if they went too far into fiction. River monsters lived by the truth, even if it meant they couldn't tell as many stories. It wasn't just that the list of species was getting smaller, though. There was something darker and much more disturbing that Wade could see. Things were changing in the rivers. Some places that used to be full of life were now very quiet. The number of fish was going down. The once clear water became dirty with pollution. The balance that had been in place for hundreds of years was wiped out by industrialization, which destroyed ecosystems. Another loss came with those, the tales themselves. It wasn't that the mysteries in the stories were solved. It was just that the animals that lived in them were no longer around. Not all of the monsters were found. They were going away. Not slowly, but faster than Wade and his team could record them. It turned into a grim race against time, from a quest to solve riddles. There was a troubling question on every trip. Would this be the last time the world saw one of these giants alive? Just as Wade started to understand this harsh truth, another force came in from the network, not the rivers. Decisions about money and ratings would have a huge impact on everything. The truth they never told the fans. In 2016, the network that made river monsters different. Animal Planet used to be the place for dangerous adventures and high-stakes trips, but now it is showing more family-friendly shows. Executives wanted pet shows, veterinary shows, and safe wildlife experiences that could be shown in living rooms without making people nervous. Even though it was a quiet change, it was the end of a show like River Monsters. The trips that Jeremy Wade took were not safe at all. They were hard to plan for, expensive, and dangerous. Each episode required weeks of travel across countries, getting permits that could take months, and always the chance that something would go wrong. Sometimes, no matter how well they planned, the team never found the creature at all. While that uncertainty made the show seem real, it also caused network execs a lot of trouble. In a time when TV needed to be efficient, being unpredictable was seen as a waste of time. The price tag came next. There were shows that cost almost $500,000 each. Logistics in faraway places, specialized gear, medical precautions, and the sheer amount of work needed to carry gear through woods or frozen rivers quickly added up. River Monsters looked like a risky investment compared to studio-based shows that were shot in controlled environments. Networks across the board were cutting costs and looking for material that could be made quickly and cheaply. Wade's hunts that took him all over the world were suddenly not in line with what TV viewers wanted. The change was clear to everyone on the production team. Plans for big trips that used to get people excited were now met with opposition. Plans were scaled back and budgets were cut. The once broad vision became narrower as costs were calculated. Wade could not win this fight. He built the show on being honest. Even when pushed, he wouldn't make up stories about meetings or stage drama. But the show's directors wanted things to be predictable. And the thing that made it stand out, its raw honesty, was now its biggest flaw. Fans were given a simple reason when the last season aired in 2017. Wade said that the trip was over because he had seen all the monsters he could think of. The public thought it was a good statement that made sense. Then again, how long could this kind of story go on for before it starts all over again? People were okay with the finish and enjoyed the legacy of a show that showed the world's biggest freshwater fish. But there was more to the truth. Years later, when he was 69, Wade said that the cancellation wasn't just because of money or networks. It was about the water in the rivers. The monsters were going missing because their homes were dying out, so not all of them were found. The stories were dying out, not being solved, because of pollution, industrial growth, and ecosystems that were collapsing. To keep going, they would have had to use old species again, or take advantage of fragile surroundings for fun. Wade said no. His way of saving both the animals and the story was to end the show. And that's the shocking truth Jeremy Wade revealed. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And click the next video now popping up on your screen.